Ellie, thank you so much for coming on the show. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's going to be a really nice conversation. I think that we have a good flow going on in our previous conversation that we had the other day.
Yeah, I agree. We really connected, and it was just very easy to talk to you and very easy to just share ideas and bounce around back and forth. So I agree. This is going to be fantastic. So,
Mhm.
Ellie, you are an artist, an author, and writing has always been your therapy. You're a businesswoman through and through, and super passionate about uplifting others, which I love. And the last 6 years have been full of growth and healing. And I'd love for you to start by just sharing with us your journey.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I can say that the last 6 years has been pretty rough in a sense where I had a lot of rediscovering to do about myself because previous to that, I was in a relationship for about 12 years since the age of 19. And so I was a very open, like very open to spirituality since I was 21. And that's where I started my spiritual journey. But you don't grow as much when you're in your comfort zone as when something happens to you very spontaneous, where you realize yeah, that you have to love yourself completely because you're actually now left on your own. And that's what happened to me back in 2018. I got separated. It was a shock because as much as I understand now that we were just not in alignment with each other anymore, we were growing our separate ways for maybe a good 2 years. Um, I was someone who was I've always been very loyal, and I liked the simplicity of my life, and so I didn't feel like it was even a possibility that I would leave my marriage. And I was married for 6 years in that relationship. And what had happened was that we had a business together, and we had never been in business together. Only for the last year and a half, we had decided to start a business, and we thought that it would have worked. But unfortunately, it really went to, if I can say this in a French way, it went to shit pretty badly. And that tested us. It tested my ex-husband as well. He was an entrepreneur. He was, it was his first time having a business in his life. So he didn't have the same, I would say, strength as I did in the emotional sense. I've been an entrepreneur since the age of 21, so I was used to having the ups and downs of what it means to have a business, having, uh, periods where it's lower and periods where it's a little higher, and then just being satisfied with what comes. And you never know too in business what's going to be your next month. And so I was used to that, to be unstable in that sense, but he wasn't. And so he didn't take it really well. And it just so happened that, yeah, very suddenly, he decided he wanted to leave me, and in the midst of our of our business, of our loss of the business. Like, we just had nothing left. We had to close down the business really quickly. We knew that it was coming, but still, like, we needed to close it down, and that was back in April 2018. And in the middle of the month, I kind of knew that he wanted to leave me, and so that happened. And that left me into shock, complete shock. I was already freaking out a little bit, even though I was very strong. And I do get back up quickly when something falls. I'm not the one to stay in my in my situation and just not do anything about it. So I had ideas. I wanted to get back up quickly. Um, but yeah, when that happened, now it was kind of like, oh wow, okay, now I'm hitting rock bottom, because this is like, I've never experienced that. I've experienced kind of like lows in business and things like that, but losing my marriage suddenly, when my husband was kind of my rock in this as well, where I was, relying on him for, yeah, emotional support like any couple would do. And then he was just, yeah, it was kind of like he just gave up on me, which was like, wow, okay. So that was a very big emotional shock to me. And I do believe that it was another awakening, another level of awakening in my spirituality, because now it meant that I needed to understand who I am on my own for the first time in my life. And so, yeah, that was pretty intense. And back then I was 31. And so I had to start from scratch. So not only did I was left on my own, but I also didn't have any more money to my name. Like there's everything we just went, to like I said, just hit the fan pretty hard. And so I was, on survival mode. Even though I was in shock, I needed to figure out my things really, really quickly because I had a house to pay and everything. So I started a business within 2 weeks, you know, um, because I was on that survival mode. But it left me to show the strength that I had and the resilience that I had, although it didn't give me the chance to grieve what was going on. And in that process, I also lost my 2 dogs that I had for 11 years. So,
Mhm.
because I needed to give them away, because I couldn't take care of them anymore, because I decided I would use my own home to start my new business, which was an Airbnb business. And that was making me pretty good money. But the thing is that, yeah, it wasn't stable for my dogs. So I had to give them to my parents-in-law back then. So that was another big loss in the same kind of month. And then, yeah, I didn't have that time to grieve. And I realized that, maybe 2 years after, I was so much on survival mode and just wanting to uh, get out of that state, I would say, of shock, that I just did everything to distract myself in that sense. And I didn't take care of me all that much. And so I went back into relationship really, really quickly, a big rebound. And I was this girl. I remember saying that today. I'm like, yeah. I was like, I don't think that I need to stay by myself. I'm not one of these women who needs time for herself. Like I can get back into relationship like this. I remember. And life just, yeah, life was laughing at me back then, because it showed me that I absolutely needed to be on my own for a good amount of time, because I was so much in my patterns still. You think that you've been in a relationship for like so long, and then you get out of it and you're like, oh, I've got this. I was in a relationship for 12 years. I know what it is to be in a relationship. Like, man, you have no idea, because we don't know ourselves. Like at the beginning of our 20s, it's rare that you see someone who knows who she is or who he is, because you're so young and you just came out of, high school, and then whatever, you don't have the maturity yet to really go and deep dive deep into your soul, really. So I was like, oh yeah, I got this. I went into back into a new relationship, and that relationship was extremely toxic. It was insane. It was a year. It lasted a year and a half, but it was on and off all the time, and it was driving me insane. And I swear to you, like looking back, there are times where I was like, wow, I was really acting insane in that relationship, because I just didn't know what it meant to not be codependent, to not, I was so much in some patterns, and it was patterns from even before my relationship of 12 years that I didn't even know I never healed. It was kind of other patterns of my teenage years, where I was a little bit more, here and there with boyfriends and just not knowing again how to stay alone. But, and it just, life was like, you have some extreme healing to do, and I'm going to do everything. And, like, it's kind of like life was like just taking everything away from me so that I could learn to live kind of like an impersonal life. That's how I'm going to say it. And so at one point, I knew that I was in some patterns now. And even though I had read all the books and I had all of the knowledge and everything that you have to do when you're in spirituality and you're spiritual, um, I needed to really have a reality check and to have someone else just come into my life to coach me. And it was the first time back in 2020, actually, when COVID hit. That was another awakening for everybody, obviously. But when 2020 hit, I also had you know I had to learn that I would be very isolated back then because I had decided to not get vaccinated. So I was going against a lot of people in my life. That was really against my choice. And again, it was just kind of another thing that was going to make me just really understand my power and stay who I am, or even to rediscover big time who Ellie is, and just stay in my power as much as I can. It was difficult because, yeah, again, I was choosing a different path from most in there, but I didn't want to be I wanted to respect my choice, and I didn't want to be in fear, because that was for me a big thing. I've always been very resilient, and I was not wanting to participate in that fear. So went into a very big healing journey on my own again, in what I call now a sanctuary that I had chosen really just unconsciously. I went to a cottage on the side of a lake. I always wanted to live there. I just didn't imagine myself living there on my own, but I believe it was a necessity, and I went there for about a year. And this is where I've done the most healing. I was alone. I had periods where I had suicidal thoughts in that time. It was a very, very dark um, time, but it was a place where it was a time where I really had to be on my own to have that strength to go and do that healing. But it was there as well where I had that coaching. I was in a coaching program, and this is kind of what I want to say to people is like, when you go into your darkness, it's okay that you go into your darkness with other people that are going through the same thing as you. And this is exactly what had happened is I opened up myself to be coached for the first time in my life, put my ego down, and I said, okay, I think I do need help. And I was coached, and this is where the biggest beautiful journey of healing began for me, because now I had a community that I could relate to. I knew now that I was not alone in this. It was kind of like a new world that had just been rediscovered, because I do come from a small town, and I didn't have a lot of people around me that was like me. I thought I was really, really different. And so these people from all around the world, we were just all really doing this work together. And that was really, really helpful, because you can be vulnerable with people that are ready to be vulnerable with you as well. And there's just so much power in community. And so, yeah, that's where I started my healing journey, like the real healing journey, and went into my patterns, emotional patterns, and just rediscovered so many things that was very well hidden from me from my childhood. And where all of these patterns, even in relationship, where does that come from? I was all hidden very, very nicely, you know. And so, yeah, it was a rough ride, but it was all worth it. And there are levels as well, I believe, and I call them dark night of the soul. So that one back in 2020 and 2021 was pretty much a dark night of the soul, but I've had another one after, only, and it's not too far away, but it's back in 2023. It was another level of surrendering. We can talk about that when we're going to talk about the book, but yeah, it's been quite a journey of just remembering who I am and sticking to that new version of me, and just really going into myself to go and hold my inner child. Um, so yeah, it's pretty much what I've been going through in the last 6 years. And I do believe today I'm kind of like on the other side of a lot of it. I can't say that I'm completely healed. I don't believe that anybody can be completely healed. I think that we always have things, but I think it's the way that we look at our patterns that do still come up, and that's where we find freedom, because we kind of know now what's going on inside of us, and we can have a lot of self-compassion. And this is what I very much developed within me with all of these years. Yeah.
Incredible. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that and just being, open and vulnerable. I know it's sometimes difficult to share these things because we're kind of going back to that place, but the level of relatability that I have with you is pretty insane. Like, I feel like my journey has been very similar in so many ways. And I've written down a few things just as you were talking to reflect back on. One thing you said was hitting your rock bottom was like another level of awakening. And I think that's so important for people to understand that when you find yourself in the deepest, darkest moments, you can, it's rock bottom. Like, you're going up from there. And
Yeah.
sometimes we have to reach that bottom in order to turn things around for ourselves. And it's kind of where we really get faced with all of the parts of us that perhaps we've been avoiding up until that point, right? And that's usually why it comes up, because we're now at a place in our life and it's time that, like you said, the universe brings it to us and it's okay, you're ready now. You're ready to face these parts of you that you haven't faced.
Yeah.
Um, and I was curious as well when you had said at first, you didn't give yourself a chance to grieve the loss of that long-term relationship, that marriage. Would you say that your time in the cottage on the lake, was that finally the time where you kind of gave yourself that space to do so? Or
Yeah.
did you, or yeah, I was gonna say, or did
Yeah.
you never really give yourself the chance?
Yeah, it was pretty much, I would say, in that time, because now I wasn't in another relationship that would just, distract me again from that. Because this is the thing, right? Is sometimes you go into a relationship and it happens to everyone, really. And we were very unconscious of this, but it's important to realize what we're doing. But most of the time, someone who has not been on their own ever, that's always been in a relationship, they tend to continue to be in another relationship as quickly as possible to replace the last person, thinking that that is going to fix it. But the thing is that, like, that's a very dysfunctional pattern, unfortunately. And what it does is it's just, it always becomes, it's more of the same, because you don't take the time to see as well that it's not just the problem was not necessarily the relationship, the other person. Most of the time, the problem is you in that relationship, and your own patterns and your own insecurities, your own codependency. And so if you're not taking that time for yourself to build your own relationship with yourself, you're not going to be able to sustain a relationship with anybody else, because you have not seeing these patterns within you. So you're always projecting these patterns on your partner. And chances are you're going to be attracting, for sure, a partner who is exactly, who has these same patterns as you. Because, the law of attraction, it doesn't lie. We attract who we are in that sense. And we're always projecting our own selves in someone else, right? So for as long as you don't fix what is within you and you don't go and heal what is within you, you cannot expect to have a sane relationship with someone else, because you're not even having a sane relationship with you. So, that was really what was going on for me. I wasn't grieving my relationship because I always wanted to just fix it with somebody else. But yeah, that was not the way to go about. I couldn't go through my grieving processes at all, because that was always a distraction. So the other person was a distraction to really just go and do that grieving process. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting how you reflected back to like your thought process at the time is, oh, I'm good. Like, I'll just jump into another relationship and like, all good, I got this. And lo and behold, that was quite the opposite of what really needed to happen. But you eventually learned that lesson. And as you mentioned in your book, which I pulled a couple of passages from, which we'll talk about a little further in the conversation. But just one thing that you do mention in there in one of your letters is that, everyone is a mirror. Like, every other person that we interact with is a mirror, is a reflection of ourselves. So when we, it is, I do think there's value in having those relationships to the point where you can start to understand your patterns, right? Like, if these patterns are coming up and repeating themselves in this relationship and then the next one and then the next one, that's kind of the time for you to tune in and go, okay, this is a pattern. I recognize it as such. But as you mentioned, the way to kind of heal that and I don't want to use the word fix, but kind of overcome that challenge and overcome that barrier within yourself is to, as you describe, spend time on your own and face that on your own. Otherwise, it's like the universe keeps showing us these lessons until we're, ready to learn them, right? So if you're someone listening to this, we're like, oh, all the guys I date are, like this, and I don't get why I keep attracting. It's because you have a lesson to learn.
Oh yeah, for sure. And even when you think, because that's what kind of happened to me, I was on my own for a long time when I started to do that healing. I said, okay, okay, I'm gonna just stop dating. And even my coach at one point, it was very funny because she needed to be direct with me because I can be very stubborn myself. But I remember her saying, like, Ellie, you need, like, I'm gonna be straightforward with you. Stop dating. Because I was in my pattern of lack, and I was like, I just want to meet someone. I'm just so tired of being on my own, and I miss that being in a relationship. And she was like, you have to stop dating, like just stop it. And I was like, at first I was like, who is she to tell me to stop dating? But she was so right. And at one point I do believe that I thought I was ready. I was ready for a relationship, and then even back in 2023, the beginning of 2023, I had met someone, and I had this, I thought it was a very big connection to this person. And this is why in my book, I've been very much able to articulate this very well because I've experienced it so much. Um, and this is where you get to be, you're not ready for the relationship, but you're ready to see your pattern in somebody else. And you don't need to be in a relationship necessarily with a person to see that. But you, like what had happened to me is that I had an attraction to someone, and I thought that it was a very strong connection. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is this connection? I couldn't even understand it myself. And I think that was love, right? But that was not love. That was just someone who was an old version of myself that was right there to say, hey, my role in your life is to come and show you all of the patterns that still are there. Yes, you've been through them, but now I'm going to show you how are you going to deal with them when you're in a relationship with someone else. And so what I was attracting again wasn't someone that I would be falling in love with. I was just attracting that old version of me through that person so that I could see all of this without actually having to be in an intimate relationship with someone. Just to really, it was so, at the time, it was really confusing to me because I was not understanding anything. But once I went through again another stage of death of an old self, this is really what was going on. It was kind of like an old version of me just reappearing to say, okay, now it's time for you to let me go, but I have to show you like that we're not compatible anymore. So you're gonna be in your face. What are you gonna do with it? And so that was extremely painful for me because that was just I feel like that was the last and, I'm saying this and I hope that it was the last kind of phase of this old version of me that really needed to die, that just came back up and said, like, let's go. We're going to go through all of the patterns through when you're going to see this through someone else. So you're really just going to be looking at yourself through that person. And I want you to have compassion because you're really just connecting to you, to that old self that needs to now leave. And
Mm.
so, yeah, so sometimes it's not going to be through a intimate relationship. It's going to be through maybe a friendship that you feel like it should be a relationship, but then you realize like, oh, wow, okay, there's a lot of friction here. There's a lot of chemistry, but again, that chemistry, where does that chemistry come from? Because I was used to having that chemistry from dysfunctional relationships, from the me that was dysfunctional also in relationships. So it wasn't really good chemistry. It was just something that I was familiar with, which
Mm.
my body felt, which my cells felt, I guess, which felt like it was natural. But this is where the ego likes to kind of just be really there and say like, ah, ha, ha, like am I gonna win again, right? But
Yeah.
it's kind of like, oh, and this is where the mind agility comes from. Like I've practiced this so much to be able to look at my patterns and see what shows up and analyze them and investigate everything and be like, okay, this feeling, it feels very familiar, but it's making me feel like shit. This is not normal. I should be feeling great around this person that I say that I feel like I love, but I don't. And why is that happening? So it was very, very interesting to me to go through that journey, without even being intimate with someone, but feeling it like it was a relationship on my end, right? Because I just had all of these, oh my God, all of these familiar patterns just grabbing me again and making me see like that they needed to heal and they needed to be seen and be listened to. And that's why they were so loud through someone else. And so, that person today, I realized like, thank you. Thank you for coming into my life because your role was so big. It's kind of like
Yeah.
his role was like, I'm going to be in your life, but I'm not going to be intimate with you. I'm not going to be one of those guys who's going to have, who's going to actually play the same game with you, but I'm going to be strong enough so that you feel all of it. And then you can realize that this is not love. This is not compatibility. This is not good feelings of chemistry. This is just you still being so comfortable or feeling like it's very natural to continue to be feeling those feelings of an old version of yourself that really needs to die now. And so,
Mm.
yeah, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise. And I realize it now after almost a year, but it was another level for me of growth and surrender. And so, yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's really interesting hearing you talk about, like the death and the rebirth and the falling away of old parts of you. You actually talk about this in kind of the intro to your book a lot as well as mentioning, how kind of from a young age you recognize yourself as being the cycle breaker in the family. And, I actually have a lot of people in my circle, especially friends back in Australia and whatnot, that we are those people. We are those people that are here to, heal the generational trauma, to heal our own trauma, and really face that. And it's not an easy task to
No,
have bestowed upon you.
nope.
And, it's really fantastic just, hearing you share your story and recognizing you have such a high level of awareness around all of these things. Um, and it's really beautiful the way that you, do describe your journey. And so I was curious that when you were in this coaching space, um, what was kind of the main modality of healing that they were kind of guiding you through or promoting? Because I know journal therapy has been huge for you. So I was wondering if it was that specifically or if there were other things that you were working through as well, other strategies and tools.
Yeah. So journal therapy actually was always, my strongest therapy because I started writing when I was actually started writing when I was maybe 15 because I'm an artist, so I also sing and I would compose some songs. So I think that that was a way for me to express myself back then through songs, even though I would not share with anyone. But it was kind of like my little journal back then. It was composing songs. And then when I started my spiritual journey when I was 21, I started to read a lot, which I didn't do at all during my, any time in my life prior to my 20s, because I didn't feel like I was interested in anything until that day that I just discovered spirituality and uh, self-development. And I was like so interested that now I had started to be interested in also just being more, yeah, kind of like a student of life instead of being a student at school that I was really not good at because I was not, like I said, I wasn't interested in much because I was an artist and I had a lot of struggle in my school years and was told I was slow and I never felt intelligent. And anyways, that's another story of its own, but it's a lot of that comes with my childhood trauma is a big part of it. But yeah, when I was 21 and I started to read, then I got really inspired to start writing about everything I was reading and just starting that way into journal. I was journaling every single day, and I'm still, by the way, journaling every single day. And all of that journaling just came to the writing of two books, which we're going to talk about after. But That was my strongest one and still my strongest today. It's very important for me to express myself in that way. And I feel like when I don't write, let's say it's been a couple of days that I haven't written it, I feel it in my body because it's
Mm,
just, for me, it's energy that is expressed out
mhm.
and it's not stuck in my head, all
Yeah.
of thoughts and everything. So it's a way for me to have just my energy flow. But when I started my coaching program, I learned about breathwork, soma breathwork, and that was something that I had never done before. Well, was really meditated as well, so that was a really strong modality of mine. But the breath work was very special to me. And at the beginning, I had a lot of resistance because I was so stuck on my, well, I meditate every day again. And I was like, I meditate every day. I don't need breath work. What is that going to do more? So a lot of resistance into breath work at the beginning. And I was also never someone who did, yoga. I've never really been interested in doing so much yoga. So it's not like I've had a lot of breathing techniques. But in my meditation for sure, I know how to breathe in that sense. But it was so different with soma breath work because now what has had developed inside of me, which I was like really surprised that I even could do this, is that I could start moving energy within me. And it's really hard to explain because you can't really show anybody what's going on in your body. And, people might think like, yeah, well, that's on all in your head. But I swear to you, it is not all in my head. It is just so magical what you can learn to do with your own body and your own energy inside of your body when you know how to control your breath and use even parts of your body. With some of breath work, we use parts of our bodies, which is in the lower chakras. So muscles that are there, closer to all of these areas that are sacred areas of your body that you can use to really optimize your breathing and move that energy inside of your body. And so this is what I learned through breath work and through that coaching program was like, it was a necessity for me while I was going through that healing journey, and especially at the cottage when I was there for a year. I had committed myself to do this routine every single morning for a year. I would wake up, I would go in a cold shower for 3 minutes right away when I wake up. And then right after my cold shower, I would work out for about 20 minutes. And then right after my workout, I would do my breath work for another 20 minutes and then a meditation for another 20 minutes and then journaling for another 20 minutes. Every single morning I did this for a
Wow.
year. Yeah, I was pretty disciplined.
No
and
kidding. I'm
yeah,
yeah,
I
absolutely. That's
was
what I'm
just,
thinking in my mind. I'm like,
oh yeah,
she's
I
got
was
the
just saying,
discipline.
oh yeah, I was very disciplined because I wanted to heal so much of myself and it worked. It helped me go through all of that darkness. It helped me sustain all of that. And exactly like when you go through all of this darkness, you need modalities like this to help you have releases. Like you can't keep all of this darkness inside of you. You need to understand how to release it. And sometimes you don't even know like what these patterns are. And with breath work, this is what I've learned is that even through meditation, I couldn't even figure it out. But with breath work, because it's energy and you're using this energy, you're moving this energy around. So all of this dense energy that is stuck in your lower chakra, even if you don't know what it is that is hidden, that has been hidden for years and since your childhood, there is something in there that is wanting to come out and it's just waiting for you to use your energy and use this breath to bring it out. And that means, yeah, you're going to scream, you're going to cry, you're not even going to know why. Like right in the midst of your breath work, it happened to me so many times where I was kind of like having this release and just being like, I don't know, I am crying, but it needs to come out. And then 2 days later, you kind of get the epiphany of like, oh, this is what came out. So it might not happen in like right in the midst of your breath work, but you will have that clarity because you will have moved that energy within you. So that was yeah, and it's still very strong to this day. I do it. I'm not as disciplined as I was back then, but it's very important to me to have that modality at the tip of my fingers so that I know that when I do need it and I want to release something. I know that this is the way for me to release something within me the fastest. So that was a pretty strong modality for sure. And I recommend that to everybody, seriously.
Fantastic. And this is what you've incorporated into your program, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. But I'd love to talk about your books next.
Sure.
You've authored two books and they were quite far apart in
Yes.
releasing. Is that right? Take us through that journey.
Yeah. The first book I wrote, I was close to 27 when I wrote it. That was in a, when I started my journaling. So I started to write a lot. And at one point I was writing so much and I was like, wow, I think that I could actually write a book at one point. And I had been very inspired by this really cool author from the 1900s. His name is Joseph S. Benner, and he wrote the book The Impersonal Life. And that little book is like a really, really small book. And it's all about, through the entire book is a very direct approach. And it's a way for you to kind of have a conversation with your higher self. And even though it was written in 1900, it's still very relevant, I would say. Um, I read it not too long ago, and I was like, oh yeah, that's why I was in love with that book. And it was very surprising for me as a 27-year-old that I could actually understand that book because it was so deep and it's not things that I was used to to read in personal growth books or spiritual books, and especially the way that it was written. And it also, back in 1900, the wording is very different from the English that we read today. So
Yeah.
it was a challenge a little bit for that too. But for me, being an artist and being a writer myself, I was just really, really, I guess, like impressed by all of it. Like my mind got really impressed quickly by it because for me, it felt almost like poetry as well. So I really love that book and it inspired me to try to write my version of parts of like how he was doing it. And so I wrote a first book. It was called, in French, it's called Quand ta vraie nature te parle, but I'm going to translate it, which is when your true nature speaks to you. And I had just incorporated a couple of parts. And every chapter, I would incorporate, like at the end of the chapter, just that style of having that direct approach with the reader, which is feeling like you're actually reading yourself in a sense where it's kind of like you that is speaking to you directly. Your higher self is speaking to you directly. And that book, it was just a dream. I didn't really have big intentions with that book. I was in my 20s. I wasn't thinking that far away. I was just like, I have a dream to write a book at one point in my life. And I manifested that really quickly, actually. It was surprising to me how fast that happened. But the book didn't really go anywhere because it released when I got separated. So the same year back in 2018, the same year, like the same time, I swear to you, I got separated in April. It came into, I think it got released in May or something. And
Right.
so I wasn't able to do anything with it because I didn't have the energy to push that. My energy was on survival mode and I needed to push my other business. I needed to do something that was completely different just to be able to survive and have money coming in. So I wasn't thinking about, oh, I'm going to be a published author and I'm going to push this book and blah, blah, blah. And also, I do believe that back then, it's not like today. Uh, Today, we have so many people that need to be, we're in that phase where everybody is awakening, or a lot of people are awakening, and it's a really good timing, more of a better timing than 10 years ago. And also, I didn't have the maturity, I believe, back then. As a 27-year-old, even though I was an old soul, I don't think that I still had the maturity of what I actually wanted to do with this book and the intention I was really behind it. Although I did sell a couple of copies, and people were really happy with it. And then I seriously didn't think that I was going to write another book. At one point, through all of this journey, to me, it was kind of like I did it and that's it. And I don't see myself writing another book because it's kind of like I don't know what to write about. because I was relying too much on my personal journey. And I was always telling myself, I don't see an ending. I don't see an
Mm.
ending to this book. So how can I write a book without an ending? It doesn't make sense to me. Like I wanted to write this, this book of like, and I thought I was going to write a book about me a little bit more. And so it was kind of like, I don't have anything positive to tell the world about my own journey and how I came on the other side of it and like, ta-da, I went through all of this and then I'm here and like, yay. Like it
You were
was
s-
really.
you were still in it.
Yes, I was still in it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
why would I even consider to write another book? Like I have nothing to say in that sense, right? And so I had kind of gave up on the idea. But yeah, back in 2023, when I was going through another, like I said, another kind of big awakening, another level of healing, that level of healing was very much a surrender experiment. So it was another level of a surrender. But it wasn't the same thing as my healing back at the cottage, because my healing back at the cottage was about mostly my discovering. It was about discovery about who Ellie was really, and that authentic self. How can I stay in that power? How can I, really identify who is my default self and who is my authentic self, and how do I go and investigate and see what are the patterns and everything. And so it was mostly about doing that work, which was very, very difficult. But the other level of surrendering that I had back in 2023 was a level of disidentifying completely with that part of myself, with that the old version of myself. So the striver, the one who always wants to make things happen, the businesswoman that was always pushing and wanting to keep a business alive that I had created through survival mode, and then realize that I can't keep something alive that's been created from that energy because that energy is not sustainable. And so it was all about just surrendering to life and saying like, okay, I know that I'm supposed to get out of this energy and everything seems to be dying with it. So what am I supposed to do now? And now it was a level of being kind of like, I seriously don't really care what's going to happen, because I'm at that place where I have no idea. I do not know anything. It's like it was really crazy.
Mm.
And at one point back in December 2023, I was alone for 2 weeks, and it was the first time I was going to be alone in a long time, because I had decided to go and have roommates for the almost last year, for the first time in my life in like 5 years, just to be able to, just to get by a little bit better or whatever. But that was very difficult to live with someone else when you've lived on your own for the last 4 or 5 years. So
Yeah.
that was another level of awakening too. But yeah, I decided. Well, I decided. My roommate back then, she was going on a trip for 2 weeks, and so I said, "Oh, yay! I'm gonna have the house to myself," because we were sharing a house and it was beautiful. It was back in the country. I had big mountains right outside of the backyard. Like it was just incredible view. Like seriously, I love that place and that house. I was very lucky to live there. But yeah, having that freedom of being alone for 2 weeks was like, thank you, God, because I really needed it. And I had decided, like, I'm not going to do anything, like nothing. I'm just going to meditate my life away for those next 2 weeks. And that's it. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to go to parties, because it was kind of like in the time, like in the holidays. I'm like, I just want to be with me. That's it, and not do anything. And so I sat down, meditated. I was the third day of that 2 weeks, and I sit down and I'm like, okay, silent meditation. And I sit, it's been 30 minutes, I'm in silent meditation. And at one point, I get this clear insight that was not from me at all. And it says, okay, well, you have another book to write. And this is the title. And this is the way that you're going to write it. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? and so and so I immediately said, well, this is not of me. So I think that I kind of have, not that I didn't have a choice, but it was so strong within me that I needed to do it. And I didn't know where that book was going to go at all. Like, even when I started writing it, I knew I was going to write it in a specific way. And I do explain that in my introduction, where I'm like, I wanted to, I before this, I wanted to find an ending. I never wanted to write another book because I could never see an ending. And this time around, I can't even see a beginning. So I'm like, this
Mm,
is really exciting to me. Like, it doesn't bother me this time because I'm in surrendering mode, right?
right. Yeah, fully.
So yeah, so that's what happened with that book, that new book, and it just came out. It took me a month. I wrote it in a month. That was how
Wow.
quickly, how much time I had as well. Remember that my goal was not to do much for 2 weeks. Well, I did a lot in those 2 weeks in the sense I received a lot, and I was writing for like 4 hours a day. So yeah, that's why that book came out really quickly.
Fantastic. That's, it's so incredible, those experiences. And I've had conversations with, other guests on the show, or even friends, people in my circle, where you just have this almost a voice in your head that isn't yours, just this higher self, or this, other spiritual essence coming in and saying, this is what needs to happen next. And yeah, it's really interesting hearing your story on that too. I've experienced that myself in smaller ways, like just in kind of guidance and stuff like that. But yeah, it's fantastic that this is what you were told to do, and in a month you created it. So
Yeah.
Letters from You to You is the name of the book. Now, you sent me a digital copy, so I did have a read through that. I really appreciate your introduction. I love, getting to know a little bit about you and your journey in the introduction, and then having that flow into the book. And you've written this book in a really interesting way as well. Why don't you share with the audience how it's written? Because it's not just a story.
No, exactly. So the way it's written, it's composed of 21 letters. So it's written letters from the perspective of your higher self. And this is why I'm saying this book is not about me. It's not about my personal journey. It's really, the book is about you. It's about every reader that's going to pick up this book, because you're actually having a deep experience with yourself throughout all of the letters, because the information that is there, and it's not for nothing that I've received it that way, and that it's kind of like the universe didn't want me to make it all about me, because if I would have made this all about me, I would not have been able to write this book at all, because I would have been in the way, you know.
Mm,
Now, because it has been received in that way, which is in a very impersonal way, um, everybody can relate to it. And, throughout all of these letters, most of it is from what I have experienced myself. And this is the reason why I was able to articulate, I think, very nicely. There's a lot of it in all of the letters that I still don't master, absolutely. But there's a lot in there that I have learned to really incorporate in my daily life, so that I can free myself from all of this, this emotional trauma and all of this programming that we go through. So all of the letters, they are all themed with a particular kind of subject that are pretty general in the self-development and spiritual realm. And uh, they're there to kind of like prompt you to take a look at that aspect of your life in a very unique way, through a conversation that you're having with your higher self in that letter. So it's pretty cool. And I actually, it's funny because I have one of my friends who is not very used to read spirituality or self-development books. Actually, I think he read like 3 books in his life, and he's 40. But he's very open and very curious, and he wanted also to support me. And yeah, he's kind of ready to go deeper into it himself. And so he's at the beginning of his emotional journey. And he was reading my book the other day, and he was like, I feel like you've written this book for me. It's insane. It's like
mm.
I just see me everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much the point. But what I found interesting about that, because I love having these comments, right? And I'm like, it's really cool, because that means that everybody is related to me,
Right.
as well. Because this was my higher self writing this book. you know? So it just shows you how we're all related to each other and we're all the same in so many ways. And that, most of the letters in there, you're going to be reading that you are, that higher self is just, it is found in every single human being. And so that means that yourself, you are found in every single human being. And so when you're having a conversation, like we're having a conversation right now, we're actually having conversation with ourselves through each other,
Right.
because this is why we're relating. This is why we're connecting. And there's no friction because we're connected to that higher self right now. We're connected to the present moment. And so we're able to communicate really effortlessly. And so when you can see yourself as that, and your life as only always just a reflection of who you are and like so many parts of you, then there's a really big peace of mind that comes with that. There's a lot of self-love that comes with that. There's a lot of compassion that you build with not only yourself, but with the entire world. And so you see life very differently. And so, the intention, I didn't have an intention when I wrote the book, but I'm going to say the intention that comes through the book, I believe, is to show everyone that you can't you can't have a balanced and beautiful outside world if you're not ready to go and look at your inner world first and build that inner world and build that foundation and really, you know, um, build all of this love within yourself so that you can see the love outside of yourself. You're going to continue to see the chaos of the world if that chaos is within you and it's never been looked at. So this is kind of the intention from the book, is to really show people like it starts with you. It always starts with you. And until you don't pay attention to the you that is there and screaming at you to be seen and to be loved and to be held, and especially your inner child that's never been, held before, or it's been through so much, and now it's your job as a adult to go and parent that child in the right way, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You can't expect the world outside of you to behave in the ways that you want them to behave if you have not even done that work for yourself. So yeah, there's a lot of bluntness in here in the letters, but there's a lot of compassion, there's a lot of love. I do believe that these are all truths that we can find. Some people are not going to relate to this at all because they're just simply not ready. um, and that's okay. But I do believe that it's a really great way of seeing ourselves differently and connecting to those parts. Because what's fun about the letters is that, and again, that was not my idea. It was seriously just told. That's a part where it told me like, this is the way you're gonna write it. I was like, okay. But when you're reading letters like this is what's cool. You can read this book as like the entire book once, or and when you're finished, you can actually reread the book, but instead of going from the beginning, you can just choose a random letter that's going to be you get inspired, you want to kind of read about emotional triggers. Well, then you're going to go and pick the number 2. I think, yeah, letter number 2 is about emotional triggers. So you're feeling really anxious one day and you're seeing how your patterns are coming up. Well, what are you going to do? You want to have a guide for you to kind of like um, observe all of this within you. You can seriously just go pick up the book and read on that letter, and it's going to probably calm you and get you grounded again and really make you, maybe not for some, but I do believe that the intention with this book is as well, that we can just pick it up from wherever in the book and just relate to one of the letters that is speaking to us in that moment. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I can attest to that literally because I'm so glad you used that one as the example because reading through the first few letters, that was the one that, evoked the most emotion out of me was the one about emotional triggers. And like you had said too, it's to someone, if you're ready to read this, then it is for you. And I think for me in my life right now, what I just kind of have going on is I needed to read that and I'm ready to hear it. I pulled a couple of passages that I'd love to just recite back and we can have a little discussion, or I can just share with you, why I love it. And it is from the second letter, the emotional triggers letter. And these are just things that just really, yeah, I had to copy and paste them and include them in my show notes here because I just felt they just were so true and so relatable. And it gave me that moment of clarity, but also it was almost like things I knew already, but then hearing it again, it just kind of solidified that, right? So the passage here, the first one I have, when you decide to finally sit in silence with me, instead of responding to a trigger, you become very powerful. Everything that bothers you from the outside is always an unhealed piece within you. No one is to be blamed for your triggers, as they are all mirrors of you. You come into this world with other people to experience yourself fully, so everyone you interact with is always just you. And that's really what you just described as well,
Yeah.
wasn't it? So it's totally relatable to the conversation and to what we're focusing on here right now. And I just love that, and it's just a good reminder that yes, everyone you interact with is a version of you. It's a part of you that you need to meet in that moment. And I think it's just so good to keep that in our minds and in our hearts that when we interact with others that evoke emotions out of us that aren't really nice emotions to feel, things like anger, frustration, or even abandonment. If you want to go a little bit further down that road, it's just a message really from the universe to say, hey, this part of you needs some attention and love, and it's time now to give it that.
Yeah, you're right on. You're spot on. You you understood this passage
Yeah.
perfectly. Yeah. Yeah, and in the place where I say like, when you sit in silence with me, which means you cannot really see all of these patterns coming up all that much if you don't take the time to actually investigate what they are. So what happens is that we're so reactive, because we've been programmed and we haven't had we're not taught to go and look at why we react, right? Um, but when you actually do it on purpose and you sit in silence with yourself, and maybe not in the moment of that trigger, but if you do that every single day of your life and you make it a discipline, you become very good at paying attention to what shows up without having someone that is interacting with you. And so you're able to go and be in a calm state of mind during that time to go and look at what you need to go and heal what is coming up. So this is practice that you're doing while you're doing that. It is practice for the moments where you're going to have someone who's going to come in front of you and it's going to say something that is going to trigger you in that moment, and now you're going to have a choice to respond with the pattern that just came up, or you're going to have a choice to say, oh, something's coming up and I know that's mine, and I know that it comes from somewhere because I've observed it so many times in meditation. And now, do I want to react from that energy, or do I want to step back, take a breath, release that, and then know what I have to do? And most of the time, the funniest thing, and Michael Singer talks about that a lot too, and this is why I love him so much, and he's been a really big part of my healing journey as well. But it's like sometimes you don't even have to address what the problem was in the moment of a trigger with someone else that you're interacting to, because you've taken that time, that conscious time, to actually observe it and see where it comes from. And now it has nothing to do with the other person. So you don't
Right.
even have to address it. So it creates, it avoids a lot of conflicts with people when you become really disciplined at looking at yourself when you're interacting with people and what these emotions are coming up, without blaming the other person for absolutely nothing, because you're blaming that person from what you're projecting on them from the feeling that you're feeling in the moment of that interaction. So you're not fixing anything, you're not even helping that person in that moment, because you're not being self-aware in this moment. You're just in reactive mode, and so and that person is probably in reactive mode as well. So what are you both doing? What are you both doing in that moment? It's like you're just projecting each other and having a fight with yourself through the other person. Really, that's what it is. You're just being angry at yourself that is not being held right now. And that
Mm,
person can't hold you in that moment because that person needs to be held as well. So you're actually the one who's supposed to hold you in the moment of a conflict like that with someone and not ask the other person to do it because that person is actually projecting the same thing that you're projecting on them. So I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying, but it's just,
yeah.
it becomes comical almost when you really look at it that way because you're like, oh my God, like we've been doing this for so long. And then we wonder why there's like so much chaos in the world because everybody is just reacting from their inner child that is unhealed. Everybody
Mm,
is just so angry and sad and because they've never really been held in that way. They're not holding space for themselves. So they're just expecting the world to hold space for them, but the world can't do it either because they're not more of, sorry, but mature adult who's done the work. So yeah.
yeah. No, and I love that word, that it's comical because that is what I was thinking when you were, describing kind of this scene of, you know, you get triggered and then you react and then they react to you and it kind of just snowballs and goes back and forth. And it is almost humorous in a way that if we can just step back and see it for what it really is, it's like, why would we engage in that behavior? It's ridiculous, right? But in the moment though, it is difficult to manage that energy and manage those emotions. But, the more work we do on this and the more conversations like this that we hear or that we have, I think are just going to, inch us forward to being able to managing those emotions and those triggers and understanding them better to, like you say, recognize the pattern and make a decision of, okay, what am I going to do next here in this moment? Yeah. There's another passage here that I love as well that just talks about big emotions. You must experience pretty much all the dense emotions to understand how the lighter ones feel. All these dense emotions must be felt to be recognized as the false you. If they hurt, they are not you. And I love the just kind of description of the polarity, right? Because it's like, you hear people say it all the time, oh, well, you can't have the good days without the bad. And it's true, right? You can't have the joyful and the enlightened and all the good emotions without kind of feeling the bad ones first. There has to be polarity there. And I love the last line, if they hurt, they are not you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really powerful.
And I'm looking at your reaction and I'm like, I wonder how she's feeling about this.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess in a way what you're saying there is they're not you, they're not the highest version of you is really what you're saying. If they're hurting, it's parts of you that you need to reflect on, but it's not that highest self
Exactly.
in that moment. And so there's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect between if you're feeling hurt and you're feeling all these emotions, it's an opportunity to recognize and go, oh, I'm very disconnected from my soul, my inner being, my higher self, and make the decision then to reconnect
Yeah. So that's
to that.
why it's not a negative thing when it hurts. People say, they see pain as very negative, but really, like when you're from the perspective of your higher self, when you can see pain, it's because you can feel, and you can feel as well that there's a discord between your higher self and you. And that means like, thank God that you can feel that pain because if you're numb, then you're even more disconnected. you know it's not better to be numb. If you're in a depression and you're numb and you can't feel anything, but you're always very low and low energy, low vibration, I mean, don't you want to be feeling that pain in that moment, just to feel something, just to
Mm,
feel that you feel a little bit alive? So
yeah.
the pain in that moment, no, it's not you, it's that inner child that is still screaming to be heard and to be held for sure, and um to be safe. um but it's a necessity for you to feel it and to see it, because when you can recognize the pain for what it is, then you're freeing yourself and you're becoming this the witness consciousness. And so you're getting into your impersonal life. Yeah, so you're seeing how it's easy for you now to go and connect to that higher self, because you can do that. You have the ability to be able to observe that pain for what it is. So you're seeing it as a pattern in that moment, and no, it's not you. It's most probably a pattern that is coming up. So you can disidentify with the pattern, with the pain, but it is there to show you that you still have some places in you that needs to be healed, and that's normal, right? But it's
Mhm.
all beautiful in that sense, right? So that's what I'm kind of wanting people to see from the book is, even though there's so much ugly, there is so much beauty in your ugly, because this is all there for your evolution,
Mm.
for having self-compassion, for having compassion in the world, for being an extraordinary human being. You need to go through that contrast, because yes, you're not going to feel those you're not going to know what does it feel like to have joy. What is it really, joy, when you are numb? If
Mm.
you're numb, yeah, and you're just going around life and always never feeling anything, I mean, how will you know how to feel this joy, how to feel this peace, how to feel love? You'll need to have something that is going to bring you pain, enough pain for you to say, oh my God, like, this is hurting. I don't want to continue to be in this state, so that you can actually free yourself from there. And at one point, you'll know the difference between being asleep, being numb, and being in joy and in peace. Because
Mm.
it's really, really hard to notice when for me, anyways, it's been a journey of my own to say, like, what is true joy and what is true, uh, yeah, love. Like, because I had never really experienced it. But with all of my contrast, at one point, it's kind of like my body started to see, like, wow, okay, this is feeling a little bit much better, but it's still, I don't know how, because I've never felt joy and I never felt true love. So I don't even know what that feeling is. And it's very interesting how when you go through that journey of healing, and really in your patterns, and you get free from these patterns because you've experienced them so many times and at many levels as well, because they become louder and louder. The more that you do this work, the more that your patterns become louder, because now you're able to recognize them quickly, and they want to get out because they know. It's kind of like your higher self knows that you have the capacity to be able to release this now, because you're ready for it. So it's gonna be screaming at you, right? And that's why it
Yeah.
hurts so much. It hurts more when you're going through this work, because you know that you can't tolerate that anymore. It's kind of your body has adapted to something lighter now. So when you're going down into patterns, it's just like it hurts more than someone who hasn't done the work. That's for sure. That I totally believe in that. And
Yeah.
so what I've been experiencing is like, all right, so I've never experienced what it means to be loved in a way. So how is that going to feel? You know, and I've been going through that in the last couple of months, and having a lot of people in my life that like, I'm surrounded by a lot more loving people, and I know it now, because I feel like I'm on the other side of that pattern, and I've let that pattern die so much that now it's like, oh wow, I'm receiving love now. And that didn't feel good. That did not feel any close to comfortable, because I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this feeling is. And then I was trying to sabotage all of the feelings to say, like, oh, I don't like this. This is too like that. This is too like that. This is too like that. And I'm like, but it's not hurting me. I'm feeling safe with him, but I've never felt this safety, this amount of love, this amount of safety. So it's so uncomfortable, and your ego is going to do everything in its power to make you believe that you're better off in your old version. So
Mm.
it's not going to make you have it easy when you're going through that. So it's kind of another level of like surrendering and just accepting, like, oh wow, okay, if I want to be comfortable in love that is sane love, then I have to surrender some more. And I
Mm,
have to love myself in this moment and not be hard on myself because I have a difficult time like experiencing it and receiving it, you know?
mhm,
So that's another journey of its own, to be honest. But there is freedom in that as well. But it's still a journey, and it's about adaptation. It's not something that you can do from one day to another. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes a
mhm.
lot of self-compassion.
Yeah.
And the people that you're going to have in your life that are ready to uh, accept you in this, they are just, they're going to be a really big blessing, because this is what you need. You need people to be patient, to understand that, hey, you know what, I'm like this today because I'm going through a phase of like, my patterns are really loud right now and they're wanting me to stick to them, but
Mhm,
I'm fighting in a way to not do it, so it's very uncomfortable. And
mhm,
so this is where compassion comes between two people, like we're talking about. Like, now, if two people are ready to be able to have self-compassion and have compassion for each other because they know that this is not natural to them, that's beautiful. That's what love is,
mhm.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
So many great takeaways from what you just shared. And yeah, the uncomfort is uncanny sometimes. And what you had said a little earlier too is that when you kind of open yourself up to this healing and you open yourself up to this journey, like the lessons get louder. And it just reminded me of a quote that I would hear often in the kind of personal development entrepreneurial space. You know, the universe will tickle you with a feather, or it will hit you with a brick. And that, that kind of reminded me of what you said, where it's like it does get louder and louder to the point where you can't not hear it anymore. Right. And it's like there is no choice that you have to face that, emotion or that trigger or that part of you. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that because it kind of summed it up in a bit of a way. I do have one more passage I'd love to share,
Yeah.
and then I'd love to move on to your offer, because
Okay.
I think it's very unique and I'd love for you to have a chance to share that. Again, from the triggers letter, the emotional triggers letter. And it kind of sums up, really what we've been kind of talking about here. If you cannot look at your own triggers and you continue to simply react to everything and everyone, how can you expect the rest of the world to be different? There is no greater work than to understand the triggers that arise within you and to let them show you that they are not you. They are not me. They come from your wounded inner child. And I think that's just, beautifully put and really just kind of summarizes what we've just been discussing. It's a fantastic letter. It's a fantastic collaboration of letters. I'd like to get my hands on the full thing. You sent me a digital version, but it isn't the full book, and I am going to jump on Amazon and get it, because just literally reading the first and second letter, I was crying. Like it evoked so much emotion in me, and I think as well, like I'm ready to receive this information. It was something that, us meeting is not a coincidence. Me having you on the show right now is not a coincidence. This conversation being heard by the listeners right now, you, the listener, this is not a coincidence. This is meant for you right now. And I truly believe that. Um, so thank you so much for writing this and for, sharing it with the world. So you do have a 10-week coaching program and you have a really unique structure. And it also does tie into your book. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about that.
Sure. So the 10-week program is related to the book. So I've decided that no one can actually come into my program if they've not read the entire book first, because it is really just a continuation of what you kind of experience within yourself through the entire book. I do believe that the entire book as its own can do a lot for you, in the sense where just you telling me about those two first letter, you already had a release. So this is perfect,
Yeah.
and it's really what I kind of want people to go through, in that sense where it sounds really funny to say that I want people to cry throughout my book, but yeah, I'd love for people to cry a lot because that means they're healing, and that's beautiful. So the book on its own is really a powerful tool, I guess, to go into your darkness and go into your healing and go into those patterns. But um, like I said, there's nothing more powerful than when you do have someone to guide you, or people to guide you, and coaches to guide you through this journey of healing, because you can't do it all on your own. Like, you need to have people that hold space and that give you that space to be vulnerable, with yourself and also with other people, because there's a connection there, right? This is where connection has been lost. People are afraid to be vulnerable, but now I think we're getting it. And this coaching program, the way that I designed it, first of all, is because I'm all about collaborating. I've been in business so long, and I tried to do everything on my own. And I saw that this time around with this book, from the very beginning when I wrote this book, it was a co-creation with my higher self. So it was a co-creation with the universe. So it's never just been about me, and I've never been alone with it. So I wanted to continue this trend of having people surrounding me and complementing what I already offer. So we are three practitioners that are in this program. So I have my good friend Phoenix. She is a breathwork instructor. So I'm not certified as a breathwork instructor. So I wanted to have someone uh, who was a really great coach and a really good facilitator in breathwork to join me in this program. And also I have a hypnotherapy. She is excellent at her work as well. She is also a healer, and she's a Reiki master. And she is going to be part of this 10 weeks program as well, to just really combine everything together. So the way that it works is that I'm offering the beginning of the session. So people are going to have 3 sessions with me, and all of these sessions are really to go and investigate what's going on. Like, we're going to be using as well a lot of, they're going to go into the writing abilities. I want that to be something that they become good at, because it's a way to express yourself, and it's a way to be alone with yourself as well, and really reflect on what is going on by writing. So I do have journal prompts that I'm going to be sharing with the students, and they're going to be doing that work. And then from there, I have something really special that I do, which I'm going to be actually writing a personal letter to them from their higher selves. So
Cool. I love that.
yeah, I like the book. You're all reading it as if your higher self is speaking directly to you, but now it's going to be even more personalized for you. I'm going to be tapping into that part of you, and just we're going to be doing this together, and you're going to receive this letter, and so you're going to know exactly what it is that you need to go and heal within you, or investigate within you. And then from there, absolutely, I needed to have a breathwork facilitator to help you go through all of the releases that you're going to be having, because you need to have these releases. So it's okay to know what's going on within you, but it's even better when you're getting it out. And to get it out, you have to go and move your energy. You have to practice moving your energy. So this was crucial for me to have in the program. So you're going to go through that, a couple of sessions with Phoenix. And at the end, once they've gone through everything and they've had a lot of releases, they are ready now to have a little bit of reprogramming. So having new belief systems within themselves. So I always say you can't really, nothing that is super positive, and affirmations and all of the great things that are of spiritual growth and everything that is always telling you to, look at exactly be in your light as much as you can. It's not really sustainable when you haven't gone and clear all of the, I would say, garbage within you, because now you're just piling up the good on the bad, and
Yeah.
then it can't stay. So it just keeps on doing flop, and it can't stay within you. So you just go back into your default self really quickly because you haven't made space. So what me and Phoenix are wanting to do is create space within you. So you're going to be creating space within you. And then once that's done, and it's never going to be completely done, but within a 10 weeks period, it's a really good thing anyways. You're going to have someone like Juicy. She's actually going to reprogram with hypnotherapy. She's going to be putting back some new system belief that now you can receive, that you're able now to kind of like keep a little bit longer and work on them and everything. So yeah, and there's going to be healing with her as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's a very well thought out, very well-rounded program. And I'm really excited for you to, yeah, create some change and massive impact within that space. I actually chatted with the woman the other day. There's another episode on hypnotherapy and the power of that. And we actually do a bit of a live session on the show. So if you're wanting to get a little glimpse of what hypnotherapy is too, if you've never heard of that, you can check that episode out. But I highly encourage anyone listening to this right now that's thinking, wow, that sounds like it's for me, to please reach out. And where can people find you? Where can they reach out and find out more about you, your work, grab your books, and check out your program?
Sure. They can find me on Facebook and Instagram for sure. I'm building as well a LinkedIn profile finally within the next day. So they're going to be able to find me there as well soon. But I do have a website. They can go on www.lettersbyellie.com. So that's the name of my brand, Letters by Ellie. And so on there, they're going to be able to see, like, for sure, they can buy the book from there as well. The Amazon links are in the first page of my website, so they can find it there. They can also go on Amazon if they want to have the book. They can just simply go and write the title of my book, Letters from You to You, on Amazon, and they're going to find it really quickly. But yeah, it's pretty much it. I think that covers where people can find me for now. Anyways.
Fantastic. And any final thoughts, my dear, before we wrap up?
The only thing that I would want to share is actually I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything that you're doing for, for the society right now, offering a beautiful podcast like this with, you're very intelligent emotionally and very receptive to everything. And it really shows that you've been doing a lot of work on yourself as well. So that's really cool to be able to have conversations like this so is so inspiring for everybody that's watching, because it's not just you asking questions and being curious. It's actually you being like, your things as well, and you've been practicing in the show. So I'd like to say thank you for doing your part as well in that sense, where you're offering a beautiful platform for people like me to just help as many people as we can in this time of immense chaos in the world. I think that people really need to understand how to, I would say, how to build their inner world, and focus on building their inner world. Now it's time to do that with everything that's going out outside. It's time to, and it's not selfish at all. It's actually a crucial part of awakening, is to now realize that the most important thing is your inner world. And if you can tend to that, the outer world is going to be beautiful, because everybody is just going to be doing their parts and taking responsibility for who they are and remembering who they are, so that we can stop this nonsense outside, right?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Changing the world one conversation at a time, and one kind of just healing journey at a time. And thank you so much for your beautiful words. I really appreciate that. That really hit me in the feels. And yeah, just I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. This has been such an incredible conversation. We've gone way over time, and I am not mad about it at all. Everything that was said in this conversation needed to be said, it needed to be heard, it needed to be felt. And again, I just thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing and putting yourself out there, and listening to the pings of the universe and following through and taking action on that, because it really is helping people and it really is making a difference. So thank you again for your time and for being here, and I look forward to collaborating with you in the future as well. I think this is really just the beginning, and I'd love to have you, inside the community, and connect again down the track. So thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.